October 31st is fast upon us. The age of summer is coming to an end. And soon, all that goes bump in the night will arise. So lock your doors. Close your windows. Gather by the campfire. And put on your spooky attire.
What's the boogeyman?
Death.
You're listening to the C-Files RetroAthon. Age of the Supernatural. Now, here are your hosts. Special Agents, Spooky Clutcher, and Tartar Sauce.
Hello there, fellow investigators. Welcome back to the C-Files podcast, or I should say, welcome to the C-Files RetroAthon, Age of the Supernatural. I'm your host, Special Agent Spooky Clutter,
I'm Special Agent Carter Sauce.
and today we are joined by a very special guest, and he's new to the channel. His name is Wolfmann from the YouTube channel Mega MovieZ. A link to his channel will be in the description. And it is great to have you on board, sir. How are you doing?
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for plugging my YouTube channel in. I'm doing great. I am very excited to be here and discuss Halloween 2. So I am really looking forward to this. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It's good to have you on. So that's right. We are going to be discussing Halloween 2 this evening. Now, you're probably wondering, well, wait a minute. Why haven't you guys discussed the first Halloween yet? Well, here's the thing. It's been a bit of a busy few months here on the podcast, and we're supposed to be having a few special guests on. And this coming Saturday, I want to say, we're going to be discussing the first Halloween, and we're hoping to have a few other guests on. Those special guests could not join us for this episode, so that's why we're doing Halloween 2 first. And the reason we were doing Halloween is not only because this is the month of Halloween, October, but Halloween Kills comes out next week. So we decided, well, for the first episode of the RetroAthon Age of the Supernatural, we decided, well, let's go ahead and start talking about the Halloween films. So here we are, discussing Halloween 2. So, straight out of the gate, Halloween 2 is interesting. I really like it. At the same time, I have my little issues with it. There's good and sort of bad, though my negative feelings on it are, well, we'll see when we get into it, but it's, overall, I'd say that it's a good film. It does live up to the prequel, as in the original film. At the same time, it stands on its own, so I'm very excited to discuss it. So, what would you guys say is something that you really liked about it? What really stuck out to you guys?
Well, one thing that really stuck out to me is, I will say, I just love how much Donald Pleasance was hamming it up in this movie. I shot him 6 times! 6 times! He's like, this is the start of his, like, craziness that he eventually descended into in the other films that down the line.
Right.
And I love seeing that. And I do love that they kept the same, atmosphere and vibe of the original, and so it didn't feel, and that it just continued right off, literally like right directly from where the first took place. It didn't feel any like different. It felt like it was almost like the same movie, just kind of a continuation of the same movie in a way.
Yeah, you make a good point, because if you were to edit both films, you could literally just edit in the beginning of the second one to the ending of the first, and you'd have like a fairly seamless transition, if you will, connecting the films. And you are definitely right. The tone and the feel of the film, it doesn't feel different. It feels like a continuation. I think what really helps it is Dean Cundey, who is the cinematographer for a lot of John Carpenter films. He does a really beautiful job on the camera work, and this movie is yet another great example of that. And just the tone and the feel with that cinematography, the film feels very well connected. And I would say that out of all the sequels that came after the first Halloween film, this is the one film that I can say had every right to exist, as in that it felt right to have it. You didn't necessarily need it because the ending of the first film is so legendary, but if you wanted a sort of like closure to the story, you could go with this film and say, okay, so if the films were to continue after the first one, then this is where it would lead. So Halloween 2 is definitely my favorite of the sequels. No, I really do enjoy it.
Interesting. Halloween 4 is actually my favorite of the sequels, but Halloween 2 is definitely high up there. It's maybe my third favorite of the franchise. So I do have a very much a great appreciation for it, and I know that, you know, John Carpenter himself said he really didn't want to do the movie. Like, he really did not have that much enthusiasm to come back to it.
Right.
But I am very glad that he, like, for someone who wasn't actually like fully in it, he did a great job. And I honestly think that he deserves just so much credit for making a sequel that was never going to be on par with the masterclass that is, you know, the first film, but still be able to carry its own with that film.
Right. What do you think, Carter?
My opinions on the second movie are in between. There are some moments that make me scratch my head like, what the fuck? And there are some moments that are like, oh, hell yeah. There's also, like, in the opening of the movie, I like how they use, like, footage from the first movie in there, or either they used it or they reshot it. And the point of view of Michael getting shot by Dr. Loomis by, you know, on the outside, and we see him fall into the ground. That's a nice idea, like a little, like what we see from the outside, like what we see.
Yeah, like a different angle.
Yeah, it's like a different angle. And the biggest thing that always scratched my head is that Michael Myers is walking towards the hospital, like he sees the sign that says Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, and he's going towards it. And the next scene, we see one of the nurses pull up in her Mustang, and as she's leaving, Michael Myers is in the back of the car. I'm like, how the fuck did he get in there if he was walking?
He's a ninja. I'd say that Michael Myers is a ninja. That's the best explanation I can give.
I mean, you're dealing with someone who is able to walk out of fire, you know, like it's nothing. He's able to, you know, get shot multiple times and come back from that. So, I mean, at this point, I believe Michael Myers can do anything. I mean, he's pretty much unstoppable.
Yeah, you know, that's actually one of the things that kind of upset me about this film, was that they sort of changed the ending of the first film. Like, when you watch the ending of the first film, and after Loomis has shot Michael, he looks out on the balcony and he sees that Michael is gone. And Loomis's reaction, he's like, he knew that would happen. He's just looking off into the distance, and you have the Halloween theme song playing in the background. You hear Michael breathing. That is such a legendary moment, because Loomis knew exactly what was going on. He knew that Michael was not human, that there was just something more to him. You know, the fact that he could take so many bullets, and again, he takes a lot more damage in this movie, and he's still going, right? So when they reshot the scene where Loomis goes out and he sees Michael, he's a lot more like, oh my god, how is he not dead? It's like, well, he already knew that. He knew that Michael could survive that. The moment he walked out on the balcony, he saw he was gone. He knew. And you get that chilling feeling. So with this film, I kind of like have a thing where I'm kind of iffy on whether or not it's a good idea to have your sequel take place immediately after your first film, or like while the first film is still happening, that's when the sequel picks up, because one of the reasons is that character development is kind of lacking a little bit, because there's no gap of time for characters to develop, in between films. Now, if you were planning on having Halloween 2 be a part of the first film and you could have like a extended director's cut of the first Halloween film that encompasses both films, and then I could say, oh, okay, that makes sense. But, the first Halloween had a definitive ending that left it open for a sequel, which I don't have a problem with at all. That's why I do have some criticism about Halloween 2018, and I'll get to that when we talk about that film, but that little gripe I have for Halloween 2018 is a similar gripe I have here for this film, is that, Michael escaped. He's still on the loose, except now we're picking up right after he got up and is now loose again. So as far as him being like mystical and this sort of supernatural powerhouse, obviously we get that, because there were certain moments in the film where like he is unstoppable, like you said earlier, Wolfmann, where he's literally on fire and he's still walking, and then he finally collapses at the end. It's like, or when he was at the hot tub, drowning that one girl, one of the nurse, he's literally sticking his hand in hot water and he's just not flinching one bit. He's just dunking her in there, and he just pulls her back up, does it again several times, and he's just like unstoppable powerhouse. And he doesn't even care that his hand's getting burned from the hot water. He's just going at it.
Yeah, great kill though. But
yeah,
but yeah, it's always bothered me, because I like humanity in my characters, in my villains. Like, I like a little ounce of humanity, and in the first film they showed that he had some, because the way they portrayed it showed that he could still be taken down like a human could, but then he can get back up after he gets shot. Maybe he can get back up and have a few gun wounds in him. Fine, he can find a way to recover from that. But like, they started taking it to a whole nother level where I'm just like, okay, I don't know if this is believable anymore. You just kind of taken out any shred of humanity he had and just kind of made him into this just mega powerhouse. And that is definitely one of my gripes with the film.
Yeah, you make a good point, because Halloween never really implied that Michael Myers was a supernatural killer like Jason Voorhees. It was a simple tale of a kid who murders his little sister for no reason, and then he's just lifeless. He just does things. He doesn't have a real reason for it, but he was still human. He still bled. He felt pain. So that little bit of humanity, you could tell that he was still human. He was just a very demented and unusual human. But the sequels just kind of went off the rails with that. I mean, Halloween 2 has a very definitive death for Michael Myers. He was still walking, even though he was on fire, but then he collapsed, and that was it. Michael Myers was dead. And that's why with Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, it didn't have Michael Myers in it. It didn't continue that story. But then Halloween 4 picks up where Michael Myers is in a coma. And it's like, my God, how is he still alive? I mean, hell, how is Loomis still alive? I know we're kind of getting off track from Halloween 2, but I just got to mention this, that both Michael and Loomis survived that explosion. And we saw Michael on fire, okay? And I don't know how Loomis survived. I guess he's just like, it's kind of like a dynamic of light versus dark, where you have like these two immortal beings, Loomis and Michael. One is light, one is dark, and they're just forever at odds with each other.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who has Halloween 4 as maybe my second favorite, yeah, I'm still always gonna look at it and at some of its decisions and be like, okay, that's kind of not possible. Like,
yeah,
like how Donald Pleasance just was able to come back from literally being exploded, and same with Michael Myers. Yeah, I just
Yeah, I always thought that they could have done it like with Jason, where it's like, okay, Halloween 2, Michael is dead, but Halloween 4, they find a way to actually bring him back from the dead, and now he's kind of like a zombie of sorts, and that would continue the sort of supernatural thing.
I want to hear Carter's thoughts on this type of subject.
On Halloween 4?
Well, on just the fact that on just what we're talking about like Michael Myers just being just kind of losing his humanity, like what he was originally designed as, and just becoming what like Jason Voorhees is, even though he's supposed to be a human, and he's just like an unstoppable powerhouse and everything. And
well, here's the thing, though. I don't understand why the hell he killed his sister Judith when he was a child, though. They didn't explain why he did it, and some people came up with the theory that one of the masks he was using was from Silver Shamrock, which was a theory, but I don't know how that works, though, if Silver Shamrock masks turns kids into future serial killers, which makes me question how the hell is one just kills their sister. Like compare the original to the Rob Zombie version, where it makes sort of sense, though, that Michael comes from a broken home, and he has an abusive mother's boyfriend, who's an asshole, and his sister is an asshole. Well, and just that makes more sense, though. In the 78 version, it just makes no sense, though. And then in the sequel, Halloween 2, we get hit with a bombshell about that Michael Myers is Laurie Strode's brother, which is a nice plot twist, but it was more like a John Carpenter saying, you know what, I'm running out of ideas. Like, he had a major writer's block, and he had gone through a year, and he was like, you know what, fuck it. You know what, Michael Laurie Strode's brother, that's why.
Well, you make an interesting point about, the twist. And I think that this was a way to sort of make sense of why Michael is pursuing Laurie. Although, for me, that kind of demystifies Michael in the first film. Like, him just randomly killing his sister, I get that most people are confused, like, why would he just do that? There's no explanation, but that was the point. Michael Myers was always this sort of faceless killer who just did things for no reason, and that's what was really scary, that you didn't know the guy's motivations. He was just going around, acting all creepy. He decides to kill his sister when he's a kid, and then he escapes years later and goes back to his home, and he just randomly chooses Laurie. I will say that I did like the idea that they were related. I just like that idea. But, obviously with the 2018 film, they decided to throw that idea out the window, which I guess I can somewhat understand, because if you're trying to keep the mystery of Michael Myers and why he does things, you just leave it there, because you don't really want to demystify him any more than he already is. But yeah, I definitely agree that at least with the Rob Zombie one, having that sort of broken home type abusive family, that would lend more credence as to why somebody would become a serial killer. Though that's kind of cliche, and I'm kind of glad that they didn't go with that for the original film, because you really didn't need a reason why Michael did what he did. Just the mere fact that he did it sets him apart from other slashers, if you think about it. Whether you're talking about Leatherface, or you're talking about Freddy, or even Jason. Each of those characters had a motivation for doing what they did. Michael, he had no motivation, and he stuck out the most.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. And honestly, that's why I don't really like that first Rob Zombie film. Is I love mysteries to my characters. I know this is a Halloween discussion, but I wanted to just bring up Heath Ledger's Joker from The Dark Knight. So in The Dark Knight, Heath Ledger has this thing where he will tell you want to know how I got these scars and all this stuff, and he goes into this whole story. He does it about 3 times in the film, and each story is different. We never have actually known where his iteration of the Joker has come from, why he is the way he is, or anything like that. We never actually have a definitive answer. The way Christopher Nolan depicts him, it's just like that this man is just a crazy psychopath who descended into madness and is just killing everyone and just causing havoc. And I feel like by not explaining, okay, well, Joker came from here. He had this motive. He did this and that, and this is how he became the Joker. Blah blah blah. By leaving that mysterious, by giving these like 3 different stories, and we don't even know which one's true, it made him far more scarier. Same with like Darth Vader in Star Wars. You didn't know where Darth Vader came from when you first watching that. Don't include the prequels. When you're first watching the original trilogy, you don't know where Darth Vader came from. You don't know where his origin lies. You don't know his motivations. You don't know many of that stuff. All you know is that there's this menacing villain who just wants to destroy planets and destroy worlds and all this stuff, and it's frightening not knowing. It's the fear of the unknown. When you
Absolutely. And
to quote, Scream, I think it's Scream that even says all the best killers don't have a motive.
Right.
And it's true. They don't have a motive, and that's what makes them scarier, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you put the nail on the head, because having a motivation can be nice depending on what story you're trying to tell. But with Michael Myers, they portrayed him as doing a random evil act, and all these years later he's still doing it. He goes back to his home and he sees Laurie and he's like, you're next, right? With this movie they added in the sister thing, and I guess, if there was any criticisms about the first film, I guess somebody would say, well, why is he going after Laurie specifically? Well, now you have your answer. Halloween 2 says, oh, they're related. So it's like, for a narrative purpose, having Laurie Strode as Michael's sister does make sense, but it does kind of demystify his character. It
makes sense, but like, it's always bugged me, because it's one of those things, like, what makes the first Halloween so brilliant is that the way John Carpenter writes it and directs it, he executes it in a way that is saying, this can happen to anyone. You are Laurie Strode. This can literally happen to anyone.
Right.
And
right,
because he leaves it so mysterious. And that whole ominous aspect of anyone can experience this type of situation makes it far more scarier than, oh, well, it's just a sister, so that makes sense that he, was coming after her and doing all that. I mean, it, like you said, it makes narrative sense, but it just does not come together for me personally. I
agree. It always felt weird to have Laurie be Michael's sister. And it's just kind of like it was kind of like a write-off. They didn't go into much detail. They didn't hint at it in the first film, so it was a plot twist that was made purely for this film, just to give Michael motive. And for story building purposes, I can understand that, but if the goal was to have Laurie be Michael's sister the whole time, they would have had little clues in the first film, because John Carpenter is very good about making subliminal messages in his films. Little plot twists that you can see coming if you have the eyes to pay attention, if you notice little hints here and there. And that's why I love John Carpenter's directing and storytelling so much, because he knows all the classic tricks.
Oh, yeah.
So another thing I want to talk about is Donald Pleasance coming back for Dr. Loomis. First of all, I love Donald Pleasance. He's a phenomenal actor. I would have loved to meet him, but he passed away before my time, so that's unfortunate. But you mentioned earlier, Wolfman, about Loomis being a lot more savage in this film, and I have to agree. When I watched the film earlier tonight, and there was a part where Loomis is in the car with the marshal and Marilyn Chambers. They're on their way back to Smith's Grove, and Loomis he's getting pissed off. You can tell he's getting irritated when he finds out that Laurie Strode and Michael Myers are siblings. He's telling the cop, turn the car around, and the cop's like, there's no way I'm going to turn the car around unless I want to lose my job. And then Loomis pulls out his revolver. He's like, what is it, police officer? What does it the cops do? Fire off a warning shot? He shoots out the window, and the cop's is like, nope, and then turns the car around. That was absolutely brilliant. That was the funniest part of the movie for me. When Loomis did that, I was like, my God, this man is savage. He is not screwing around. He turned that car around so quick. I was like, oh my God, that was great.
Oh, that was. and I just love how how he's hamming it up this movie, and he just looks like he's having a blast throughout the whole thing, and is just but he also is probably one of, if not like my favorite performance in horror. Like, I just love his role as Dr. Loomis, and like you said, I wish I could have met him, but it's unfortunate I wasn't around during that time, because he just seems like such a genuine person, and he is such a great actor, and he's one of the reasons. I know everyone's like goes towards Michael Myers when they think of Halloween, but I mean, I always go to him as Loomis as well, because that's just as important.
Yeah, having that dynamic is very crucial, because you can't have, for example, you can't have Luke Skywalker without Darth Vader, and vice versa. You have to have that sort of dynamic, and Dr. Loomis really kind of brings the audience into a perspective where you can relate to what Loomis is doing, because Loomis has been with Michael for so long, and you can, when Loomis is struggling to convince people that Michael Myers he's dangerous and nobody believes him, you sympathize with him. And that translates again over into this film up until the end, because Loomis is like, you know what, there's only one way out. And he decides to blow himself up with Michael. And I mean, that's a really good textbook ending, because it kind of completes Loomis's character arc of being this protector, and then he sacrifices himself to make sure that the evil dies. And Donald Pleasance is just a phenomenal actor, and he sold it off really good. He fit right back into his respective role as Dr. Loomis in this film. The seamless transition. And one of my favorite quotes that he said in this movie was actually at the beginning, where Loomis is talking to the neighbor after he sees that Michael is gone, and Loomis says, "You don't know what death is," and then you have the Halloween theme cue up, and it's like that was really good.
Oh yeah, Carter, what are your thoughts on Donald Pleasance?
Donald Pleasance is a brilliant guy. Like, he played the role of Dr. Loomis amazing, and it's a shame that he is no longer with us, but only in memory in his works. But he didn't also do Dr. Loomis. Like, that wasn't his other role, but he was in this old Disney movie from the 70s called Escape to Witch Mountain. If you've never heard of that, then shame on you. It's like an old classic, but he does that job well. But every time I see Donald Pleasance in a different movie that isn't Halloween, I always call it's like, so Dr. Loomis is still alive, but he managed to survive and change his name, and that sort of.
That's funny.
That is funny, and that is a good movie too. That Escape from Witch Mountain.
No, Escape 2.
Yes, definitely.
Escape 2, yeah.
Definitely, yeah. So one of the other things I really like about this film was the beginning, the opening credits. I like how they took the original opening and then they modified it to where the pumpkin opens up and you see the skull. I thought that was a pretty neat little trick, nice little gimmick there. And like, what are your thoughts on the new theme? I'm just curious what you guys thought about the new version of the Halloween theme.
The like 8-bit kind of retro version of it. I mean, that's what I got out of it. I don't know. I personally, like, I'm a big fan of the movie itself, but I'm honestly kind of not a fan of the new theme they went with, because it did kind of sound video gamey to me. I don't know. It sounded kind of odd for me. I don't know why.
What do you think, Carter?
My opinions on the new theme, it's like Wolfmann said, it sounds 8-bitty and something out of a video game. Not to mention, I was getting like Halloween 3 Season of the Witch vibe, like from the beat. I know that this was in the 80s and techno was starting to become a thing, and it just didn't hold a candle to the original, because whenever you hear the piano play that particular tune, you know it's going to get good. But when you hear this 8-bit tune, it's like, okay, swing and a miss. It was like a big swing and a miss. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was I have to agree. I do enjoy the theme, though I don't think that it really fits with the film. I think that if you were to replace that theme with the original theme and just like edit it in to whenever the theme song plays, it would fit so much better. And I think it's just because that first theme was just so good, right? It was really good. It was really well done. John Carpenter did the soundtrack. I don't. Do you guys know if he did the soundtrack for this film? I don't
I
know
think
for
he
sure.
did, but my question is like, because we mentioned earlier how it's seamless. It like starts out literally right where it left off and all that stuff.
Right.
Right.
I honestly feel like, why didn't they just reuse the same exact theme from the first movie? Because it kind of feels like that continuation, and I feel like it would have added to that. Pretty much, this is a continuation of the first movie by just kind of using the same theme, maybe adding a few tweaks here and there if you wanted to make it a little different, but pretty much make it like practically the same theme with maybe just a little bit of a difference.
Yeah. That's something that I always wondered about, why they decided to make Halloween 2 take place on the same night as the first film. Why they didn't just go with like basically what we have now with Halloween 2018, where it takes place years later. One of the things that I really didn't. I'm gonna talk about Halloween 2018 a little bit because my criticism for Halloween 2 is similar for that film as well. That the way that they have Michael sort of come back and the story doesn't, it. Michael Myers is lessened in regards for his mystique just a little bit. With 2018, I always wondered why they decided to go with Michael was captured that night in 1978, and then he for the past 40 years he had been in a either prison or he was in a mental institution. For 2018, that's literally what happened, and I was always like, why didn't you just have him be gone or missing for all these years? You would have kept the spirit of the original film with that amazing ending, and then you have a sequel, and the way you have Laurie Strode now, all these years later, her paranoia, it makes much more sense and it fits better because Michael is still out there somewhere. And that's what the first film ended with, that, Michael escaped and he's still out there somewhere. And it just gives you chills. But with Halloween 2, it's like, oh, well, this is just a continuation and Michael eventually dies. So the way I see it is that John Carpenter didn't, like you said, he really didn't want to do a sequel, but he did. He helped, he did the writing, and he wanted to kill off Michael, which he did. And that's why Halloween 3 doesn't have Michael Myers in it, aside from it like appearing on the TV where they're showing the Halloween movie. So I think that Halloween 2 is, you could kind of take it as, okay, if you want closure to the story, then you watch this film, but you don't necessarily have to, because the first film ended where it's like, yeah, this could be the only time you see Michael, or you could get a sequel sometime later. And of course, we got how many sequels now? How many continuations? You got the Halloween 4 timeline, then you have the H2O timeline, and now you have the Halloween 2018 timeline. So I think that Halloween 2, if you're the kind of person who likes closure to your story, if you felt that Halloween needed a proper ending, like Michael is dead and that's the end, then Halloween 2 is something you would want to watch to get that satisfaction. For me, I like the original ending for Halloween where, he's gone and Loomis's face says it all. He knew exactly what was going to happen. It's like, yeah, he shot Michael 6 times, but yet he's still moving, But that's just me.
Yeah.
What do you think, Carter?
I just don't understand, like, the logic. Like, how the hell does a guy get shot 6 times? Not to mention, he falls out of a window, he gets stabbed, he gets poked in the eye, and he gets, if it was real life, that guy would have been dead. And also another thing that bothered me is that he was killed with a 38, Smith & Wesson Model 15 by Loomis. Loomis was carrying that type of handgun when he was shooting Michael Myers, and it's a shame that it makes no sense. So how the hell do you survive getting shot by a 38? And to my opinion, though, he should have just gone with a 44 or a 357, because a 38, it won't do shit.
The whole reason why they had him survive is simply for the case so they could have Donald Pleasance in the next one say, "I shot him 6 times! 6 times!" He says, all like over the top and great. That's the whole reason they had that.
I mean, to be honest, I would have the same reaction, because if he shot him point blank 6 times and he's still moving. It's like, I don't know anybody that can take 6 shots to the chest and fall off of a balcony and still move around like nothing's wrong,
Yeah. And I don't know. I feel like the way they did it, it still is not exactly possible, sure, but you can actually make excuses for possibly how he can get out of that situation. But then as the sequels went on later on more and more, it's just sort of like, okay, I don't know how he survived that. I don't want to compare because Halloween's the far better franchise, but it's like, compare it to Fast and Furious. Okay, the Fast and Furious franchise, when you're watching those movies, they are utter ridiculousness. But the thing is that they have a shred of believability in the first few installments. You're like, okay, that's not really possible. But maybe if I was to think about it, there's maybe a logical way as to how a car could fly from one skyscraper to another skyscraper, possibly. And so then you're like, you can actually maybe think of that. While like the newest installment, Fast and Furious 9, which I saw, completely shreds any ounce of believability. Nothing's possible anymore. Like, it completely goes off the rails. And I feel like Halloween with Michael Myers' whole like, oh, death, he can die this way and he can die this way and he still won't die. It's like the way they kept on doing that just became so unbelievable to the point of it kind of became ridiculous, honestly. But the first film was, sure, it may have been unrealistic, but it had that shred of believability that made it be like, okay, maybe he had adrenaline. Maybe adrenaline boosted him and he was able to crawl away, or he was able to run away really quickly, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that what the sequels failed to do was lock down exactly why Michael can do what he can do. If they gave an explanation that he was supernatural, like if they just came out and said, okay, there's a supernatural aspect to Michael Myers, and that's why he can't die, then at least that would be an explanation. But instead, they just went with the gimmick of not explaining. And for the first 2, maybe 3 movies that have Michael Myers, it's like, okay, I can sort of buy certain things. Though with Halloween 4, the mere fact that, first of all, he got his eyes shot out in this film, right? And then he was burned alive and in an explosion, okay? So they bring him back for Halloween 4, and there's no real explanation. And he can still see. He gets out of his coma, he can see just fine. So, I chalk it up to, this guy has the same healing factor as Wolverine. That's just it. That's how he can keep moving the way he can, because he's got this supernatural ability to heal from his wounds, and that's why he was able to survive being burned alive, shot dozens of times, and keep going. But the mere fact that the filmmakers couldn't exactly nail down why Michael can do what he can do, even with all the sequels, they just couldn't nail it down. And that's why for H2O, they have that ending where Michael's decapitated. It's like, okay, the explosion in Halloween 2 is a definitive death, but if you really wanted to twist it somehow, I guess you could say Michael somehow survived that. Now Michael got his head cut off. So how did he survive that? Oh, it turns out it wasn't actually Michael in the costume. Michael switched places with a paramedic. I'm like, why? Why would you go that far? Why can't you stick with a proper definition as to what Michael is? If Michael Myers is like Jason Voorhees and he's just supernatural, just explain it to us. At least we get an explanation. But, that's why as far
utter resurrection in a Halloween podcast.
maybe we got to talk about it someday. We'll just tear the movie apart. Oh man. But you see, that's why I like Halloween 2 out of all the sequels, because if you wanted a conclusive end to the story, that's it. Michael Myers is dead, Loomis is dead, Laurie's alive, at least. So, but Michael Myers is gone, so he ain't coming back. But then Halloween 4, and I don't necessarily mind Halloween 4. I just wish that they would have did something different where it's like, okay, yeah, Michael Myers is pretty much like Jason Voorhees. Some would say, oh, well, they're just copying off of Friday the 13th, but it's like, well, who came out first? You know, like undead Michael Myers. I mean, he was kind of acting like that anyway. He was lifeless for the most part. I mean, he had grunts of pain, sure, but he was taking bullets to the chest, getting stabbed several times, and he's still moving. So, you know, give us like a definitive reason as to why he can do what he can do. And that's why I'm curious to see where they're going to go with Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. You know, because once again, Michael seems to be human, right? I mean, this in Halloween 2018, he got his fingers blown off, and he had grunts of pain there. He survives a fire a little bit. And that's where Halloween Kills is going to pick up. But, you know, I'm just curious to see, are they going to give a definitive reason as to why this guy can keep moving? Because Michael Myers is a lot older now in Halloween 2018 / Halloween Kills, and he's still moving the way he is. So what is it? Why can he do what he can do? And I'm hoping that we get a good answer, because if not, then I'm just going to say, okay, if I want a conclusion to the Halloween story, I'll just stick with this movie, because it's like, yeah, they didn't really explain why he could continue taking bullets, but at least this time he gets a definitive death. He burns alive.
Yeah, there's one thing that bothered me in that Halloween Kills trailer, and it was that when he walks out of the fire, you know, it's that he has his entire mask is still intact, and all of his clothes, his jumpsuit is apparently invincible, because that's all intact.
Yeah.
Even though he literally just got exploded in a fire. I was like,
Again.
I'm like, it would have been realistic. You know, no one wants to see, like, you know, Michael Myers' penis. I get that, but it would have been realistic to be like, okay, well, he's pretty much naked right now, so he kills one of the firemen, takes one of their costumes, disguises as a fireman, and then he's able to kill more of them because he looks like them. And then it's like, it makes it human, because then it's like, he doesn't have his mask yet. He has to find a mask later on after he is wearing this fireman outfit, and then he finds another jumpsuit later on, and all of that, and it makes it a lot more human. And one of the things I liked about Halloween 4 is that he was that way, that he had to get all of his stuff again. And when they ended Halloween 4, it almost had a similar ending in the vibe of, they seemed like they actually wanted to kill Michael Myers in that movie, because they were leading it into Jamie Lloyd becoming the new villain because of how they ended it. She was going to become the next killer, and then they completely scrapped that in Halloween 5.
You know, it is interesting that you say that, because I always thought that, you know, maybe if they wanted to have like a supernatural explanation, you could say that like the spirit of Michael Myers, you know, Michael Myers died, but the spirit lives on, and because Jamie's his niece, you know, the curse is now passed on to her, and so she's going to grow up and be the same way like her uncle Michael. But like you said, they scrapped it, and they just went with the same thing. And then that's when they decided to do the thorn thing, right? The mark of thorn. It's like, okay, druid curse, but you're still not explaining to us how Michael can survive everything that he's survived. It's like, there's a druid curse, but that's it. And that only explains why he kills his family. That doesn't explain why he can survive everything that he's survived. So that's why, again, I'll say that Halloween 2 has a definitive end for Michael. And if you want that definitive end that involves him dying, then there you have it with Halloween 2. I mean, I can enjoy the other films, and I do to a certain degree. Like, I do enjoy Halloween 4. I love Donald Pleasance of that film. The film has its flaws, but I do enjoy that film. It's just, for me, Halloween is the best one out of the franchise because obviously it's the first one, it was well done, and that ending left it open for a proper sequel, where they left that mystery where it's like he still somehow survived. And if you want to explain how he survived everything, then you could explain that in a sequel that would be done properly. But, it's kind of like up to you how you want to, enjoy your Halloween films, like what timeline you want to follow and say, okay, this is my definitive timeline that I enjoy. You want to go with the Halloween 2 to Halloween 6, with a Thorn trilogy, or do you want to go with the H2O timeline, or if you want to go with this new timeline. Yeah.
But I'm so passionate about because I'm so passionate about Halloween 4 and its ending that it originally set up, that I'm actually trying to write a fan film that would be a sequel to Halloween 4 and kind of retcon 5 and 6 again. But but it would be like the actual sequel to Halloween 4, like what fans wanted to see before they did Thorn and this whole druid curse weirdness and everything.
Yeah. So as we begin to wrap things up here, what are you guys' final thoughts on Halloween 2?
Well, I guess I'll let Carter go because he doesn't.
My final thoughts on this movie is that it was a little rushed, but sometimes you can't rush art, though. But in this case, it was actually pretty good, though. I like it. If it was in a ranking, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. So I like it. It's not up in my list of movies to watch of sequels, but it's decent.
Okay. And how about you, Wolfman?
I'm about the same way. I would give it a little bit of a lower score. I'm like a 7.5 out of 10, somewhere like that. I do enjoy this one, and I watch it. Every time I have a marathon, I'll watch this movie and turn it on, and I love the atmosphere. I love the performances. I love the tone of it. And we didn't even mention the kills, but the kills in the film really are awesome. With the bathtub kill, the hot tub kill, the kill where he picks up that lady, just stabs her, and pretty much picks her up with one hand and all that jazz. So there's a lot of really cool kills in this film as well. So, and I really love Michael Myers. It was rushed, like he said, and also the theme song, like we mentioned, was not good. The new theme they used, and yeah, there's a few other issues I would have fixed, but overall, I think they did the best with what they could.
Yeah, I agree. The movie has its flaws, but I will say that out of all the sequels we've got, I would use this film as my favorite out of the bunch. It does have its flaws, and I do agree that some of those kills were pretty gnarly. They showed a lot more blood this time around compared to the first one. First Halloween didn't have as much blood, and the kills were sort of toned down in that film. But with this one, they showed quite a few gruesome scenes, like the hot tub scene. Having that woman with her skin coming off because of the boiling water, or having the needle go into the nurse's temple. It was pretty gruesome, but I mean, they definitely upped the danger level, you could say, with Michael, and he had much higher body count in this film too. He had a lot more kills, so he was definitely a lot more aggressive and dangerous in this film. And one thing I do want to mention before we go is the funny scene. I consider it a funny scene because it's completely ridiculous, where the Ben Tramer character is finally seen for the first time, and he's dressed up in the Michael Myers outfit, like the mask and the jumpsuit, and then he gets hit by a police car that gets ran into a van, and just the utter hilariousness of that entire scene. I get a laugh out of it every time I see it. I know it's kind of cruel because it's like you just witnessed a guy die in one of the most gruesome ways possible, and you're laughing at it. But one of the weird things about that scene, though, is how the hell did Ben Tramer put this suit together? He's literally Michael Myers. He's got the same mask. It's a different hair color, yes, but it's the same mask. It's a boiler suit. And I'm thinking to myself, where did he get the idea from? Because with Michael, he just got the idea. Well, it wasn't even necessarily an idea. It's just he killed a city worker to get the boiler suit, and then he broke into a hardware store to get the mask. It was something that was just kind of rush moment. You know, he wasn't really thinking. He's just grab a suit, grab a mask, and get to killing. But Ben Tramer's over here like, oh yeah, I got the Michael Myers outfit. He didn't say that, but I mean, he's got the outfit. You know,
Yeah.
It's a little strange. But overall, as far as rankings go, I would probably agree with both of you that like a 7.5 to 8. I mean, you know, it's not a bad sequel. It's not even the worst of the sequels. It does have its problems, but it's overall a fairly decent film.
The worst of the sequels when you've got a certain film I can think of in the lineup.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to do it for this evening's episode. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. Thank you, Wolfmann, for coming on and discussing this film with us. It was great having you on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I look forward to, or we look forward to working with you again. Guys, make sure you check out Wolfmann's channel. That's Mega MovieZ on YouTube. I'll leave a link in the description of the podcast and the video when this goes up on YouTube, so you guys can check out his channel. He's putting out a lot of great content. You know, Halloween's a big month for us podcasters in regards for covering the scary films of the season. So make sure you stay tuned here on the C-Files as well as Mega MovieZ. And with that all being said, thank you guys very much for listening. And until next time, fellow investigators, remember, the entertainment is out there.